Hello everyone, it's Melanie here with Vintage Hill Studio. I'm so glad you dropped in today. I'll be doing another project using upcycled materials, and this time it will be doilies. As you can see, I'll be using both crochet doilies and linen doilies. So here's a little bit of history behind the doily. In the 17th century, a London draper actually created the first doily, and that was for summer wear, and later it was used for ornamental napkins for desserts. And we know that most doilies were used to protect furniture. And then during the Victorian era, they were used to bind the stems of posies. So an all-around productive little textile. I'll be working with 6x6 papers to back those doilies. And I have a lot of learning processes in this video that I'm going to share with you. There were a few oopses, and I guess that's a word, oops, mistakes. And I'll show you how I fixed those. So here I just went through my various doilies and selected the papers that I thought backed them the best. And then I started with this heat and bond, which I've used in some of my other videos where I had adhered old linens to the card fronts, and that worked great. But because the doilies have a lot of open area, I was taking the heat and bond and trying to apply it in nondescript areas, in other words, places that wouldn't show when I adhere this onto the card front. Kind of like you would do with foam tape or anything else if you're working with vellum. Okay, so I cut these into tiny little pieces, trying to put them here and there so again that they wouldn't show when I adhere it on the paper. And I went by the directions, and brought over a little piece of linen to put over the top and ironed that onto my doilies in just those spots. And I was a little concerned if that would be enough to hold the doily. But I gave it a try, and it did not work out like it does with my other projects where I used less porous linens. That works great for that, but you can see these doilies did not stick properly. So it was not a good adhesion to the paper. And I didn't want to move forward with my cards until I rectified that. So plan B, spray-on adhesive. This is Elmer's spray-on adhesive. It's multi-purpose. You give it a good shake, and it is a permanent adhesive. And it does say on the back that it can be used for fabrics. So you can see right here, this solidifies the case that heat and bond did not provide good adhesion. I mean, I can peel this right off of my paper and it's not even damaging my paper. Okay, so I'm starting over here with the spray adhesive, and I bring over an old box, and I have an old piece of cotton fabric in the bottom. This is what I use to do all my spraying so it doesn't make a mess on my work surface. So I put that doily face down, shook my adhesive, get it mixed up really well, and then I did a light spray. You really should open your windows for this, but you can see a little bit of that spray there. Okay, and then I had a hard time getting that off of my fabric because of the porous nature of these crocheted doilies. Okay, here comes a little bit, I just had to laugh out loud about this. If you've ever made Rice Krispie treats with the marshmallows and you try to press them down in the pan with just your hands, this is what I felt like. I had marshmallow goo on my hands from the spray adhesive. So I am trying to diligently get this down on that 6x6 piece of paper. Of course, then my doily sticks to itself. But if you work fairly quickly, it's a little forgiving. You can see I can work around the doily, I can lift it and place it where I want before I press it down more firmly. Of course, this is not even centered, but I was doing the best that I could with this sticky mess. You can see it's still sticking to my fingers because now I have the adhesive on my fingers from the back side of that doily. Anyway, I'm going to fix that right-hand side by just trimming that off, and then my doily will look centered. But much better adhesion. Much better. So I continue to use that on all my other doilies. Going through that same process, but I got a little bit smarter here. Now, instead of spraying over that linen or that cotton fabric in my box, I started using wax paper, and it was much easier to take off the sprayed doilies. Removing that from the wax paper and then adhering that down onto my 6x6 paper. I'm getting better at this. But I did want to share all the mistakes that I made so you can learn from my mistakes. Okay, aren't those looking beautiful? So to really get good adhesion, what I did after I applied those to the front of my paper was took a little brayer and really pressed firmly on the back to get those doilies really stuck down to the paper. All right, there's a look at one of my doilies, fully adhered on the paper with the spray adhesive. And then I went over and used a 12 by 12 piece of paper to make myself 6x6 top folding cards. And this is some heavier cardstock. Because the doilies themselves have a little weight to them, I wanted to make sure I used heavy cardstock for my card base. Now I brought over my silicone mat, which you all know I love, and I'm going to use liquid adhesive, again because the weight of the doilies is fairly substantial. I want to make sure that my 6x6 panels stick to my cards. So you can see I got a little bit of glue on my silicone mat. I'm trying to get this spread out a little better. But that's no problem because all I have to do is take my napkin or my finger and just wipe away that adhesive. And it is such a great work surface when you're doing a lot of work with adhesives because my paper will not stick to where I overran my glue around my card. Okay, again, I will bring over that brayer and give this a good once over to make sure that I firmly adhere this to my card. And you can see I'm squishing out a little bit of glue. That's fine. I know that it's spreading underneath that panel, between the panel and my card, and I'm going to have good adhesion. I just really want this to stick well. And then you can see I do have glue on my mat, and what do? Just take my finger and wipe it away. Presto. But aren't these cards coming together beautifully? So there I have stamped a little sentiment, and here are several samples of my cards on the different cardstock. I just think they're beautiful. It's a great way to give these doilies a second life by upcycling them. So I hope that you will look around and see what you can find in your own home or at garage sales or wherever you are and give some of these things a new life simply by upcycling. I did have to make my own envelopes to fit those 6x6 cards. That was no problem. I have a YouTube video out there on how to make your own envelopes. So I hope you will feel free to subscribe to my channel or my card blog, and I will see you next time. Happy crafting, everyone.